Hey, welcome to part 3 of Liminal, the space between where you were and where you're not at yet. The space that you probably didn't choose to be in because something happened to you. Something forced you out of this comfortable, ordered way of living into this uncomfortable, chaotic place. Whether it was the loss of your job or your career, or the loss of a relationship due to betrayal or divorce or death, or the loss of a season of life due to retirement or graduation or your kids leaving home. Something forced you into this in between space. And now you're here, and if you're not careful, you're going to wind up stuck here for a long time. One of the ways that you end up stuck here is holding on to an old story, holding on to an old way of living. And that story was formed at some point in childhood. You started to put together these pieces. You began to tell yourself this narrative of, I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm not good enough, or I don't belong, or I please my parents, or I annoy my teachers, or I'm athletic, or I'm popular, or I'm intelligent, or I'm artistic. We started to put all of these pieces together and formed this story about ourselves. Then we began to repeat this story to ourselves, and we began to make choices in our life based upon the story that we were telling ourselves. And then we began to put together an entire life and career and plan, and we made this story true. And now, in this liminal space, parts of that story don't make sense anymore. And I want to look at someone's story in particular today. That's the story of Elizabeth, and also the story of her husband, Zechariah. We can find it in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1. Elizabeth's story was one of being born to a good family. She was from the lineage of Aaron, a priestly lineage, and she married a priest. And together, her and her husband, Zechariah, were righteous. They followed the rules. They did the right thing. They did what they were supposed to do. And yet somehow this perfect ideal union, this perfect genetic and religious match, were unable to conceive a child. A plus B did not equal C in this situation. They followed the rules. They did everything right. And yet for some reason, the way that they hoped things to be was not working out for them. And what we know about the ancient world was that they had a limited understanding about many things, including fertility. And so their misconception was that a woman who could not conceive a child was forgotten by God, that she maybe was being punished for something she did wrong. And so there was a stigma around being unable to conceive a child. And it was actually grounds for divorce from the husband, and it was a cause of embarrassment to her father's entire household because she was unable to carry on the family lineage. And the woman's sole role in the ancient world was her ability to bear and carry a child. And so for Elizabeth, this was a critical piece of her story, of her identity, of the way that she lived her life. For years and years and years, Zechariah and Elizabeth would have prayed and waited for a child. And only to get to later in life when this was no longer a possibility, but this was a part of their story. And at some point later in life, Zechariah is at the temple and he's praying to God. He's burning incense and he's praying, and an angel appears. And the angel comes to tell Zechariah that his prayers were being answered, that his wife was going to conceive a child, that they were going to be parents. And Zechariah's response, Zechariah's reception of the message from the angel is one of both skepticism and also resistance. Zechariah doesn't even know how this could be, and it's not even possible. And so Zechariah is so lost holding on to his old story, the story that he knows, the way that he knows God to work in the world based on his own experience, based on history, based on tradition. There's this way that he expects God to work and move in the world. And here this angel's telling Zechariah that something new is going to happen. And Zechariah is unable to receive this new story because he's holding so tightly to the old one. And many of you have reached out this week talking to me about the way that you have grieved the things that you have lost in this liminal space. And I want you to know that I'm right here with you. We all collectively have entered into this liminal space due to the pandemic, but we all had these individualized things that were happening in our lives before we got here collectively. And so some of my parts of my story that I'm learning to let go of are the vision I had for what my family would look like, for what a lifetime partnership would look like, for what my career and my vocation would look like, for what my geographical location and community would look like. I have entered into this disorienting liminal space alongside all of you, holding on to these old stories, these identities that no longer are true about who I am or what I do or where I live. And in this space, the longer we hold on to these old stories, the longer we stay stuck, the longer we're trapped in this liminal space because we're not allowing room for a new story to take root. And so while I know you didn't choose to be here, I know this isn't the place that you would like to be, I want to let you know that the longer you're holding on to that old story, the longer you're going to stay in this space. I also know that it's incredibly tempting to try and go back and to try and relive that old story, to go back to the way that you knew things to be, to go back to that old way of living, to go back and try and recreate that story, because I hear it every single day. I hear many of us saying, I can't wait for life to go back to normal. I can't wait for life to be like it used to be. I can't wait for how it was before. I can't wait for normal life again. And we can't go back to normal life. We can't go back to the way that we were living. We can't go back to the identity and the story that we were in, because so long as we're wishing and hoping and looking for that story to come back to us, we're not allowing space for the new story to come to be. And so Zechariah was skeptical and resistant because he could only see the way that the story had played out thus far, and he couldn't see the new way that things were coming to be. And so the angel gave him a practice that he had to participate in. He was given no choice. His mouth was silenced for 9 months. For 9 months, he could do nothing but let go of the old story and receive the new. Silence is an important practice in liminal space because silence helps us to quiet the narrative, to quiet the story that we've been telling ourselves our whole life about who we are and how we exist in the world. And that's an important part of this disorienting space, because who we were and how we operated, the way that things were aligned, isn't how they're going to be anymore. And I know there's pain in that. I know there's pain in that. I know that you've lost a lot. I know you're grappling with all of that, and it's important to grieve, to give yourself space to grieve in this liminal space. But also you must release that old story so that you can begin to open yourself to receive the new story. I want to talk to you more about this throughout the week, but I just want to give you the opportunity right now, today, to begin practicing silence, to quiet the story in your head, to open your heart, to still your body, so that you might be preparing yourself for what's to come, the new identity, the new story that awaits you. I guarantee you it's better than the one you were living before. I guarantee you it will take you to new and exciting places that you could never imagine. Zechariah could have never in his wildest dreams envisioned where God was going to take him, what this child would be on this earth to do. So join me this week, come back and follow along, and we'll have a deeper conversation about how we can silence ourselves, we can release and let go of this story that we're holding on to in order to receive a new story. But I especially want you to know today that you're not alone in this. We're all in this. We're all here. We're all collectively in this moment in time, learning how to let go of our old story. And I know that's hard. I know that creates all kinds of fear and anxiety within you. And I know that you long for that old story. But the more that you long for that, the less you're dreaming and allowing for space for the new to take root. So don't get yourself stuck here. Don't trap yourself in liminal space. Don't suffer longer than you need to suffer. Give yourself room to be silent and receive the new story.